Hello, it's Classy here, back with another Tribes video, and today I'll be starting a new series where I go through all of the tier lists for all of the different modes in separate videos. And before we get into it, I'll say that my sources are from the Naruto X Boruto Ninja Tribes database. So this is programmed by Patman, and a lot of community members contributed to this website. Has everything you need to know in the game. And let's go into the tier list section. Make sure to read all the disclaimers. And I've shown this in a lot of different videos before, but we use a numbering system from 0 to 10, and you can either search up units or you can filter by different modes, and that will basically allow you to compare the units, and it's just like a tier list. You can also click PvP and PvE for filters, or even look at the tribes. So I definitely recommend using this if you want a detailed way to compare units. But for many tier list videos, the format of the information is a little bit different from this. So although we haven't added the buttons yet, we can type it in the link. And now you'll see a tier list that looks very similar to the ones you can find on tiermaker.com. So for today's video and the other videos in this series, I'll be using these tier lists. It's the same information and the same unit ratings as before. The cool thing is that this is automatically updated, and it's just a more compact way to see all the information on one page. So let's jump right into it. First up in the SS tier, we have our three favorites: Sai, the chakra battery, basically the best chakra generator in the game right now. He can give chakra to everyone on your team, and he's crucial for pretty much all the modes because having chakra allows you to jutsu more often and earlier, and in arena where you want to get an advantage by taking out or stunning your opponent's units to mess up their rotations and give them less attacks on their turn. This is basically very crucial. So that's why everyone uses Sai. Everyone should be focusing him as their first main unit, getting him to 6 stars. Now, Kakashi is a timeless unit with insta-jutsu. He can stun and he does a lot of nuke damage, even though he's not a power creep unit. That's what makes him so good. Bandai hasn't really made other insta-jutsu units because they've realized that they're really strong. KCM is a new insta-jutsu unit that they made though, and he has 2 modes. So he basically has double the insta-jutsu because when he transforms, he gets all of his chakra and health back. And he just gives so many buffs to your team that it's really hard to list them all off. But the cool thing about this website is you can actually click on the icons and you can open up their character information. So look at all these buffs. We got offensive buffs, we got defensive buffs. Then for the second jutsu, we got more offensive and defensive buffs. And even for the fourth skill, we got some status effects, suppression rate, more critical rate. So many good buffs on one unit. And that's what makes him so strong. And the fact that he can also passively buff starting at the beginning of the battle, doesn't even need to be in your rotation or be jutsuing, makes him really great for arena because the first few turns matter a lot to determine who gets the early advantage rotation wise and unit wise. Now for S tier, we have Santa Naruto Sasori. This is the age old combo where Santa Naruto applies 100% confuse. And then if you look at Sasori, his jutsu lowers damage increase rate, damage reduction rate for all enemies inflicted with the status effect for the rest of the battle. So this is a permanent debuff, and with Naruto's 100% status effect suppression rate, you also get a 100% chance to apply these debuffs, so that's really great. And he can also do some other debuffing, does some pretty good damage for a DAOE unit. He can boost some status effect statistics for your units as well, and he has initial 5k on a tank, so Sasori's really great. He's even better with Santa Naruto. You have to put them together if you have both. Make sure Santa Naruto's first though. so you can do the combo correctly. But on their own, both of them do great damage. Santa Naruto is a very strong AoE nuker who can also do some stacking on himself. So that's what makes these two in S tier. You Are Heavy is similar to Kakashi. He's initial 5k vitality. He does a ton of damage. He can do 2 stuns because his skill 2 counts, although you probably won't be using it. But he can stack and get stronger as the battle progresses and more units die, because he's in the revenge unit, and he can hit for like millions of damage, and if he doesn't end up killing for some reason, he can just stun them. So this is a really great unit, and everyone should be using him on their team as well. Kid Naruto is also really great, and the cool thing is he is very accessible to players as well, being a UR because of the anniversary event, but he basically just provides a lot of protection for your most important targets, so make sure to put him with Sai so that you can keep your chakra generator alive. And yeah, I don't want to spend too much time going through every unit, or else this video will take forever. But another thing to note about the way that this tier list is formatted is that it's not in order. So if you want to actually compare specific numbers, like for example, this might be 9 to 8 number wise, you want to go back to the old page that I just showed you so you can get the more accurate comparisons between the units. But for A tier, we have Gaara. He's the OG tank. He provides a lot of guard rate. People like to call him Garda for that reason. So all the guard rate buffs you'll ever need on your team, he can provide them. T. Jiraiya, he provides the tribe gauge, which is pretty decent. And I think he also has some buffs for your T units, yeah. And some decent buffs. It's not too crazy on Jiraiya, but he does provide some value and his vitality helps out. Kirin, he isn't as good as he used to be, but he can do AoE stun, can provide some good debuffs on the active enemies, and he also boosts attack for your cell. T. Deidara, a lot of crit support, like critical suppression rate and crit rate. So he also has an AoE stun, so he's the OG crit support unit. And nowadays there are still not that many units that are better than him at doing it, but for Arena he isn't as good as some of the other units. Granny Chiyo. So this might surprise you, but a lot of people just completely ignore Granny Chiyo or don't use her. Maybe because of the way she looks, or like she's not a fan favorite character or something. But she's actually pretty good. She provides a ton of healing that's passive instead of active. And her passive jutsu does some decent debuffs and stuff, but it's not too crazy. But her healing and her ability to provide some debuffs on the enemy with her jutsu at the same time, it makes her pretty strong actually. So that's why Granny Chiyo is actually a lot better than people think. Especially in Abyss, we'll talk about that in another video. But don't sleep on this character. Hidan provides great tanking, can do some great nuking as well with his jutsu. And I think he provides status effect, suppression rate, which is great against all of these status effect based teams that we see in Arena nowadays. SR Heavy is really strong, provides status effect rate for his teammates. He can do guard rate, boost as well. So he's a great tank. He has initial 5k and he can stun on his own jutsu, so he also provides that. So a lot of great synergies with status effect, which is what a lot of people are using on their teams right now. So that's why you should put this guy onto your team as well. And he is accessible as well because he was an event unit, and a lot of people just have him like really buffed up and 7-star and such. Sage Mode Jiraiya, he is like the OG tank AoE stunner. So he can do stun and burn, provides defensive buffs just like the other tanks. That's what makes him strong, and he can also heal himself for a good amount as well. And yeah, CM2, similar to Your Heavy in a way, kind of, where he can stack buffs on himself and he can increase his own stats effect rate, and he does great damage. He has a good vitality, the 5k, and he can also buff your team when you're faster, and he stuns, so everything you want on an A nuker goes into this guy. Toby's really great at killing tanks. He has a lot of debuffs for tanks. He has an AoE stun and burn, just like Jiraiya does, and he does great damage because he's power creep, AoE nuker, on a T unit, of course, and he has the 5k. So if you think about it, the 5k vitality does matter a lot when we're deciding which units are in which tiers, because, as mentioned before, of how Arena works and what to value in Arena. T Boruto, people don't really remember this unit too much, but he's actually not that bad. He can provide damage increase, damage reduction for 3 turns, which is basically the full rotation. He can boost tactical shinobi. And does good damage on his own as well, especially when attacking first. Now, of course, he's probably more on the 8 side than the 9. Danzo's really good, actually. He can boost your allies' damage increase rate and damage reduction rate, and he's a D unit tank, and he can also debuff, so he's very offensive for a tank. And he just provides a lot of other tank defensive buffs. So definitely a great tank to have, and he can do great damage, and he's really annoying to play against. Kakashi provides buffs on every turn as long as you're faster, and he also has some different ways of interacting with different unit types depending on who he hits. Shutsu, so pretty versatile. I've done a ton of videos on this guy. Nowadays, of course, a lot of new units got released and power creep and such. That doesn't make him as good as he used to be. Obito's really strong. 5k initial, huge debuff on his Jutsu, ton of damage on his Jutsu. He can stack on himself, just like the other Uchiha clan. And also has a burn, and I think some buffs for allies as well, offensively. So this guy's just super offense oriented. Make sure to keep him protected, and he's great for just dealing out a ton of damage. Minato, also the 5k vitality, also does some deep buffs and does a lot of good damage for a T unit. So a T unit nuker and offensive support. Six Tails, probably the second best A-type AoE nuker. He does debuffs, he can stack on himself as well with each turn that passes, and he basically focuses on just dealing out a ton of damage and then providing debuffs so the rest of your units can finish off what he started. You are Mitsuki, people don't really talk about him much, but he's actually really strong. Again, he has the 5k, he has a stun, he debuffs damage increase rate and critical rate for enemies, so you'll be taking less damage back. Then he just debuffs them even more. So he'll do a lot of damage on his own, and then he helps your unit survive in an indirect way. Now Mei, she can boost status effect rate, critical damage increase rate, guard rate, and the cool thing about her is her jutsu is great for sure, and it does AoE damage actually, but her fourth skill is really strong because it lowers special ninjutsu and tri-special damage increase rate by 28% starting at the beginning of the battle. So that basically allows you to get the advantage early on in the beginning of the fight. Sure, your opponents might not jutsu with every unit, but everyone's going to be using the high chakra vitality units, so they'll be able to jutsu earlier, but then you kind of prevent their damage by having a Mei because she can debuff their jutsu damage. It's pretty awesome actually if you think about it, and very unique for a unit like this, and she provides a lot of other buffs to your team as well, so great support unit. Kid Sasuke, he does generate chakra for his active cell, which allows for some pretty cool combinations. You can do like a turn 1 Senta Naruto jutsu, do a turn 1 CM2 jutsu, so pretty cool stuff you can do with him. But he does a lot of damage, he stuns and burns, he gives himself chakra on jutsu, so you can do it again. And he also boosts allies' attack, so another great nuker and offensive support. White Mask is kind of like power creep Sage Mode Jiraiya. He literally has power creep, he can stun as well. He doesn't have the burn, but I think his defensive buffs are better than Jiraiya's, and they're less conditional. And he just does a lot of tank buffs for your team, so that's really strong, and he can help protect your important units as well. This character, Sasuke Time Travel, is actually really strong, and people might not know this all the time. I don't see this character used too much in my arena battles at least, but he has the 5k again on a tank. He does good damage on his jutsu, he can burn, provides a lot of tank buffs, just like the other tanks in this tier and above. He also boosts status effect suppression rate, so he's kind of like Hidan but better. And that's pretty much the summary for this unit. A lot of the tanks just have like the same effects, just slightly different numbers and stuff, so we have to talk about their unique text and just ignore all the generic stuff, or else this video would be way too long. It's already getting pretty long. Nagato's really strong. He has 5k again. He can debuff the target's damage structure rate and guard rate. He can boost attack. He does good damage on jutsu. And he also has a kind of like a power creep version of Kid Kakashi's fourth skill, where every time you're attacking with any cell that's faster than the opponent's cell, you'll get extra buffs. But in his case, he's doing critical rate and critical damage increase rate, so that's great. Also, guard suppression rate. So a lot of important buffs that might not be easy to find on the other units, and he can provide all of them as long as you're faster. He gives them to you every single turn, so really good, kind of like a power creep Kid Kakashi in a way, although they're not like the same unit type, they have slightly different roles, but great unit to put on your team. Now Madara, guess what vitality he has? Yep, 5k again. He provides a lot of protection for one cell, so this is very useful if you want to protect your prime damage dealers or prime targets. And on his jutsu, he lowers damage reduction rate, guard damage reduction rate, so he's really good at debuffing the enemy tanks especially, and he does great damage on his own to defend shinobi, and if he attacks regular shinobi, he'll do great damage also. But specifically on defense shinobi, he can shred them, and he'll debuff them if he doesn't kill them. So your other units can deal with those annoying shinobi. Now we've already hit around 18 minutes, and I've only gone through 3 tiers. So let's just take a look at the B tier. A lot of these units you'll know because they're either like the OG free units that are given to everyone, and the beginners all use these units because, you know, they have what you need in the beginning of the game, and you can get them started up pretty easily and upgraded pretty easily. So let's just go through the ones that are slightly less common to see. So Kiba has the Instajutsu. There are not many of these guys. So Kiba, Kakashi, KCM. It looks like people who have a K at the beginning of their name will get the Instajutsu. 1010 is underrated. She has 5k, she has a stun, which is important, and she boosts guard suppression rate, which is pretty rare, so that's pretty cool. Let's see these other units. Tsunade is pretty good for some combos and stuff, and she provides some good healing and support for A units. Dari provides support for D units. Sakura Blossom is good for Tribe Gauge and healing, but much better in another mode, not this one. A lot of these other units you probably have already seen like showcases or stuff on. Sarda is kind of like the Walmart version of Santa Naruto, so you really don't need to use it. Yeah, guys, you don't need to use these units B tier below. Honestly, if you just have enough units on the A tier and above. And sometimes you can put one of these units if you want. Of course, this is just a general tier list, and maybe you want a specific build or something like that. Great Snake Orochimaru is actually not too bad. He does some pretty decent debuffs. And it's not the end of the world if you have him on your team, but that's assuming you don't have anyone better. Sublime definitely isn't as good as he used to be, because he used to be like the prime AoE nuker, but now we have better ones. So, and his vitality really doesn't help. If he had 5k, he'd be amazing still. Kamui, oof, kind of sad. He used to be like, by used to be, I mean like for a few weeks. He was a very good buffer for your team. Itachi, man, the downfall. He used to be at the top of people's tier lists. Really not that great anymore. Vitality doesn't help, for sure. You'll notice that the vitalities of people in this tier list tier are not too good. I don't think I see any like crazy good vitalities anywhere. So that does really matter in this mode. So let's see. Yeah, Itachi provides like attack and critical rate and guard rate, guard suppression rate, but they're just better T supports nowadays. You don't need to use them anymore. And again, it's hard for him to actually hit the jutsu because of that vitality. Even if you have Sai on your team. Tikara, you might want to use him if you're trying to build against a faster opponent. B version 2 takes too much time to ramp up for this game mode. He is a really good tank in some other modes though. T Kisame, man, he was cool for like a few weeks also, and people just stopped using him. He does some pretty okay damage increase rate, critical rate buffs, but nothing too crazy. He also provides chakra, but it's conditional, so the dream of having him and Sai on a team to do like super chakra buffs, it doesn't really happen. Inoki, just like a low tier nuker. Tobirama is definitely better in modes where you know your opponent, so that's why we don't really use him in arena. D Boruto, he has to confuse and he can help against faster opponents, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, Shikadai. So he's actually not too good in arena. The vitality again doesn't help out. Shikamaru at least has the 5k, and he can also stun. I mean, Shikadai stuns as well, and he can also like do some buffs, debuffs, boost his own status effect rate permanently. But again, the fact that he needs to take a long time to wind up to actually get the first jutsu off is pretty annoying. This is pretty cool though, like the debuff starting at the beginning of the battle for 5 turns. People with these effects are usually pretty strong. So I would just say you don't want to use them unless you don't have better options. This Itachi is way better for A type teams if you want to try to build around that somehow. But if you're using an A unit and you're looking for an A unit that can support allies, you might as well just pick someone else that's higher in the list. Jin is pretty bad as a tank compared to the other tanks. And KLM, he's actually very good for some other modes. Again, not for arena. Vitality, he has the AoE stun and he should do pretty decent damage, and he does a lot of buffs and stuff. But In this mode, it's not going to be as useful. You also boost Tribe, and that's cool, and more critical buffs. But again, they're just better A units you could use, better AoE nukers you could use. So that's pretty much how the B tier turns out. Like, you could look here for replacements if you're missing units or you're building something specific. Below this, you really do not want to be using these units unless for a very, very specific reason. Like, for example, Hiruzen, you can use him for his 4th skill if you're trying to do something specific, kind of like a combo where you can take away your enemy's chakra. Yeah, make sure to go to the team building school if you want to try things like that out. But for the most part, most people aren't going to be doing that. So we don't go to C tier, we don't go to D tier, we probably don't go to B tier at all. And I've basically covered all of the most important units that you can probably use on your team for arena. I hope this really helps your arena endeavors, helps you guys win. Team building specifically, you can look at other guides on my channel. There's a lot of different guides, or just join the Discord server that I have and we'll teach you. Thanks for watching, and we'll be doing Ninja World Tournament next.